All right, this is Paul Harbour with Voices of America Recordings, doing my second podcast with Dale Williams. And Dale is an instructional assistant at North Clay Middle School, and specifically shadows and works with a student who is in a wheelchair, who isn't very mobile. All right, Dale, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
The questions that I wanted to ask today really have a lot to do with just your youth growing up. I know you said you were born in 1951?
Yes.
Okay, and you had mentioned at one time that you lived on the East Coast.
Yes. I started out in New Jersey and lived most of my life in New Jersey.
What part of New Jersey?
I was raised in New Vernon, which is a small town south of Morristown, and sort of north-central Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Lived there in Morris County for 40-some years.
For 40-something years
Yeah.
there. So how did you go from 40-something years there to Indiana?
Well, the economy and that sort of thing in New Jersey was getting bad, and my husband decided that we would go to Pennsylvania. It was less expensive. We could still work in New Jersey. We were close enough, so we went there.
So from New Jersey to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And what does your husband do?
He was my first husband passed away.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The second husband and I went to Pennsylvania. He was a warehouse manager
Okay.
in New Jersey.
Can I ask questions about the first husband?
Sure.
All right, how long were you married?
A little over 9 years.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
How did he pass away?
He was electrocuted, actually.
Oh, my.
He and I owned an appliance repair service,
Uh-huh.
and he would bring home microwaves, that sort of thing, work on them on the weekends.
Yeah.
And microwaves are weird to work on. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
really careful with them. They have a capacitor in them,
Right.
and that stores electricity, large amounts.
Mm-hmm.
And he was discharging it. There was a fray in the cord on the drop light he was using, and it just went right through him.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I worked for Overhead Door for a long time, and the garage door motors, they have capacitors. And usually when they would go out, if it wasn't working, it was because of the capacitor, or if
Right.
the motor just sat and would hum.
Mm-hmm.
But I never had a bad experience with them, but I know how powerful they can be.
Yeah, you've got to
And-
discharge that before you work on them.
Yeah, and they didn't really have a safety class or anything for us.
Mm-hmm.
We just took it out of the box. They rolled around loosely in the box,
Oh my gosh.
pulled it out, unplugged the old one,
Right.
plugged in the new one, and off it would go.
Wow.
And that was it. Nobody ever said anything.
That's scary.
Yeah, yeah. So you grew up in New Vernon,
New Vernon, yeah.
and how big was that town?
Small. It was out in the sticks. Maybe 5, 6, 7,000 people max.
So about the size of Brazil.
Yeah, but it was all residential.
Uh-huh.
We had a little general store, sold this and that, which was right next to a post office that was in a house,
Uh-huh.
and a gas station and a firehouse. That was about the sum of the town.
So back then, and it was this way a little bit for me growing up, but driving 30 miles or 30, 40 minutes to get to anything, the store, the supermarket,
Right.
that was kind of the norm. It was just an accepted part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like if I have to drive 30 minutes for something, I'm inconvenienced.
Right.
Clay City has 1,000 people. Brazil, I think, is around 5,000 to 7,000.
Uh-huh.
And that's one thing I don't like about being in Clay City, is if I need anything that I can't get from the IGA, the dollar store, I have to drive 30 minutes to get it.
Well, we drove, it was 5 miles to Morristown, and that was the county seat.
Uh-huh.
So that was a decent town. It had virtually everything in it
Yeah,
that you'd need. But you had to drive 5 miles to get there. And
had the town square and everything.
Oh, we had a school, too,
Yeah,
where I went to elementary school. No high school, though.
yeah. No high school? So
No.
how far did you have to go for high school?
Morristown.
Oh, just to Morristown,
Mhm.
just 5 miles.
Right.
You didn't walk, did you?
No.
Uphill both
No.
ways?
No. My dad did, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, he had to walk.
He walked 5 miles from New Vernon to Morristown.
To school, to
And
high
then
school.
No buses, no transportation
Not
at all
back
for
when he
him.
was in school, no.
Yeah. And how much of an education did he get?
He graduated from high school. He did take some college courses before he enlisted in the Army for World War II.
Uh-huh.
He went to Cornell, actually. He was going to be a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Is he still alive?
No,
No.
no.
My grandfather was in World War II, but he's passed away in 2000 or 99, somewhere in there. But his education was 3rd grade, I think.
Okay.
That was it for him.
My dad went to a one-room schoolhouse, though. His elementary
Yeah,
education was a one-room schoolhouse.
yeah, that's how it was for my grandparents.
Yeah.
So, and how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one sister.
One sister.
That's it.
And your highest level of education for you
I
guys?
have an associate's degree,
Uh-huh.
um,
In what?
liberal arts.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that explains a little bit like I consider it like a hippie connection when I'm talking in class and
Yeah.
I see things that are a little controversial and the kids are really, really far to one side or the other,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always more in the middle, and I see that you seem to be in the middle too, and
Yeah.
that liberal arts could do that. That's what I liked most about college, was
Mhm.
that it prevented me from being so close-minded. My
Oh,
classes
definitely.
forced me to look at things from other points of view
Mm-hmm.
and just to find kindness, beauty, and about everything.
Yeah.
That's what I liked. Your sister, how far did she go in school?
She graduated from high school, and then she went to, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Catherine Gibbs. It's a secretarial school.
Uh-huh.
She went to that for 2 years, graduated from there. So,
Is she still in that kind of work?
yes.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I know that kind of work is almost dying off now, isn't it? I know there's a lot of secretaries
Right.
in places, but the etiquette, the professionalism of the secretary life from back then isn't there. You don't really go
No.
to school to be a secretary
No,
anymore.
when she went to school, she had to wear heels and stockings. Of course, they didn't have pantyhose then. She had to wear a hat every day. She had to wear a nice dress suit
Uh-huh.
and gloves. You did not go to school without all of those things. Pretty bad.
Yeah. And she probably still had to wear that stuff at her first job.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A real madman kind of.
Really?
Thing, isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Huh. I've heard colleagues in the building talk about how when they applied, they had long hair coming out of college, and the principal
Mhm.
said, "I'll hire you, but only if you cut your hair.
Right.
You're not gonna do this."
Some
in the
people wouldn't
school."
even get interviewed with long hair.
Yeah.
You know?
I wonder how that applies now. I bet it's still that way a lot.
Well, I'm sure it would be discrimination, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you
They would
can't.
have to be more careful about it. If I was a principal and was interviewing somebody that seemed very disheveled,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably just decline to hire them. I wouldn't say the purpose or the reason was because they looked terrible.
Right.
They looked like crap, but I would just probably not hire.
Yeah, you do have to be really careful.
Yeah. But outside of the professional world, people don't care about looking the part anymore, do they?
Not as much,
wanna-
for sure.
Yeah, they don't care about looking really sharp and professional like they used to.
Right. Yeah, it was a different world back then.
Yeah. So, did you go to college right out of high school?
I did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you were done with that by the time you were 20.
Right. And then I got hired by the college that I went to.
Uh-huh.
They put me in as assistant to the registrar.
Uh-huh.
And so I worked there for about a year and a half, and continued. I did take some extra courses after that.
Yeah.
But, then I met somebody and got married, so
Yeah. So you got married at 22?
24.
24.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have a child?
I had no children with my first husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you 24, then when did you remarry? How old were you?
I was 37.
37, and you do have children with your...
I do,
Yeah?
yeah. I figured at that point in my life I needed to get on with it. So, yeah, I had my son at 38 and my daughter at 43.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd that
That was a
how'd that
zinger.
go?
I felt like the grandma in the maternity ward.
Yeah. So when you go to school with your kids,
Yeah,
you were old enough to be a lot of the mother's mother, probably.
almost, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I had Mercedes when I was 20,
okay.
and Chauncey is 13, and I'm 43, so when I was 30 with Chauncey.
Right.
And I am a way better parent with Chauncey than I was with Mercedes. More patient, more understanding, and so your kids probably had really good upbringing just because you already knew what was important, what wasn't. You know, with Mercedes, I wanted to push her and push her and push her. And with Colton, not so much. And now with Chauncey, it's more of figuring out what he wants to do. And the pushing for him is making him stay with something long enough to see if he really likes it or not.
Yeah.
But I'm not yelling at him from the sidelines.
And how old is he?
Chauncey's 13.
13.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was told while I was raising my children that I had the patience of a saint.
Oh, yeah?
And I guess I did have a lot more patience at that age.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're... Okay, just to back up a little bit to just make sure we didn't lose anything.
Okay.
So you have your daughter when you're 43.
Right.
You had your son when you were 37.
38.
38. So your daughter when you're 43, so she's getting out of high school when you're 60,
Yeah.
just about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when did you move here? How old were you when you moved to Indiana?
I've been here since a year ago this past July.
So you haven't been here that long.
No. No, I'm new.
Let's see, if you're born in 51, you're 62?
I'm 62.
So your daughter hasn't been out of the home that long then?
No.
Is she in college now?
She's in college in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And actually we're excited because she just got accepted to University of Tennessee
Yeah?
for animal veterinary science.
Yeah?
So she's going to go there in the fall.
Well, that's exciting.
She's disgustingly smart.
Yeah? I think you've mentioned that before.
Yes. Yes.
And what about your son? What does he do?
My son, well, he graduated from East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania with sports management.
Yeah?
But he hasn't found anything in his field yet, so he's working for a company in Philadelphia.
Yeah?
He's doing all right. Seems to like it.
Do you get to see him often?
No.
No?
No. Actually, I haven't seen him since my birthday last May.
Oh, really? Did he come here for your birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually surprised me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And no grandchildren yet?
No, bite your tongue.
Really? You're not in a hurry?
They're not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
They need to live a
They're
little bit.
not ready. What about you?
Oh, well, they come when they come.
It's like for me, with Mercedes and her age, I'm ready for a grandbaby because I miss not having the little ones at the house. But I don't want her to have a baby yet. I want her to graduate, be working, have a good solid life.
Exactly.
But the selfish part of me wants a little baby.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They're fun to play with, fun to hold.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But not yet.
Yeah.
They need to live a little.
Yeah.
Becky needs to get through school. My gosh. She's got 7 years left of college, so she's going to be a vet.
Yeah.
She needs to do that.
Yeah, that's a lot of schooling
A lot of
for
schooling.
veterinarian
It's just like being a
sciences.
regular MD.
I've heard that it's sometimes tougher than being an MD. Because with animals, there's all kinds of species of animals. With humans,
Yes.
there's one species.
And she wants to specialize in the exotic,
Uh-huh.
the big ones, elephants and,
Oh, really?
yeah, zoo-type things, so she can work in a zoo.
I never even thought about the exotic animals.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always thinking about horses, cows, cats, and dogs,
Right.
and pigs, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So you're married to your first husband for 9 years,
Mhm.
and then you remarry when you're I'm so bad.
37. It's
When you're
okay.
37.
Uh-huh.
So you moved to Pennsylvania with your
After-
first husband. So
No,
after
the
that,
second husband, I moved to Pennsylvania.
with the second husband.
Yes.
How'd you meet the second husband?
Through work,
Yeah.
yeah. I sold the appliance repair service eventually after my first husband passed,
Uh-huh.
and took a little time off for myself, and then I went back to work for a company that I used to buy parts from.
Uh-huh.
And I met my second husband there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he sweep you off your feet?
No, it was
Or-
weird.
No.
Actually, we started working at that company on the exact same day.
Oh.
And I don't know what it was, but he was considerably younger than I.
Yeah.
And, I had second and third thoughts about that.
How much younger?
14 years.
Oh.
I robbed the cradle.
Yeah. Now it's not such a big deal, but I guess
No.
at that time, at 14
Yeah.
years is a good difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I think it's easier with that much difference when the woman's older than the man being older. I think about myself now, at 42, and I have a buddy that's dating somebody that's in their early 20s, and I think, I would not want to listen to a 20-something girl. I wouldn't want to listen to them.
There's a
the
lot of
talking,
drama.
the yakking, the drama. But
Yeah.
if I was 55 and they were 30, then I, or if
Yeah.
I was 50 and they were 30, it wouldn't be so bad.
The older you get, the difference gets smaller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Sure.
yeah, what does it matter? After they get past the 20s,
Mhm.
what does it matter?
It's not so bad.
And does he
Yeah.
have a college education?
No, he graduated from high school, and
Uh-huh.
that was it. And then he went to work.
And what does he do now?
He's passed.
Your second husband is passed.
He passed this past May.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
That's okay.
Can I ask how or?
He had a lot of emotional problems, and he was an abuser of various substances,
Uh-huh.
and I think eventually it caught up with him.
Yeah. And I can edit out any of this
That's
that
okay.
you don't want in there.
It's all right.
Well, I didn't know that. It's so funny how you can work with somebody
Mm-hmm.
really pretty closely, hand in hand, and then
Mhm.
know so little about them.
Yeah, we went through a lot,
Yeah.
and eventually I had to put a stop to it legally.
Uh-huh.
It was a bad situation, really bad.
Did you move here with him?
No,
No.
no. Actually, I ended up getting a PFA, which is a protection from abuse order from
Really?
the court. Yeah, it was a bad situation all the way around. Bad for the kids, bad for me,
Yeah.
you know.
Do you have family out here?
My sister is here.
And so you came here to live with
Yes,
her?
and I'm with her now.
You live with her now?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Sometime, but not on this,
Mm-hmm.
I might ask other questions.
Okay.
But, so your sister lives here. How long has she lived here?
She's been here 4 years.
Yeah?
She moved here when she got married to a man who has lived here his whole life.
Yeah?
And they're doing fine, except we're talking about moving back to Tennessee, which is where she's from.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And what's her last name now?
Paulus.
Paulus, I don't know any. I moved here from Missouri, so I don't.
Okay.
I know some of the big farming names in our
Mhm.
area, but
Mhm.
not all the last
Oh, there's a
names.
gazillion Pauluses.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. He's one of 12.
One of 12 kids?
Yeah.
So if you go to Tennessee, what town would
Knoxville.
you go to Knoxville?
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be too far from like Gatlinburg and Pigeon
Oh,
Forge.
no.
So you'd be in really beautiful country,
Yes.
wouldn't you?
Yes.
When
And
do
a
you
little
think-
bit warmer than here.
Yeah. When do you think that'll happen?
I don't know. They need to sell the house here.
Uh-huh.
So.
Is
we're-
it for sale?
It is for sale.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Both retired, I guess?
No, he actually works at the high school. He's an aide at the high school.
Oh.
And she works in Terre Haute for a construction company
What company?
in the office. I don't remember the name of it because
Hmm.
she just Actually, she's starting on Monday,
Oh, okay.
so I don't remember the name.
And so I'm guessing there must be a pension or something there for them to like sell
They're
and then
both-
go and start over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, her family is all there, or most of her family is there.
Her family, I mean, I assume is your family, of course, or are you talking about like her kids? And
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Uh-huh.
Does she have grandkids?
She has grandchildren. She has 6.
So by association, you get to at least be around some
Oh,
grandchildren.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, she started having her kids a lot younger than I did, too, so,
Uh-huh.
that made a difference.
Yeah. The one day in class, we were going over Black history, and we were talking about the civil rights and things like that. And you had some interesting perspective on it, considering you were in New Jersey around this time. So if we can, we'll talk about some of that.
Okay, those were scary times.
Yeah, and you would have been
I was
probably
in,
7, 8 years old when the real heat of it was going on in the late 50s and going into the early 60s. You would have been 9, 10 years old.
Yeah,
And sometimes our memories are a little bit biased or sometimes cloudy, or they're prettier than what things actually are. Excuse me. But what do you remember of that time? Of the segregation? Do you remember seeing the different water fountains, any signs
Okay.
up and things?
well, in my elementary school, for example, there was not one black child. I went to school, that's a fallacy. I went to school with 2 black children when I was in 3rd grade for that 1 year.
Uh-huh.
After that, there were no black children in the school at all.
Were there none in your neighborhood?
There weren't any in the town. And when I went to high school, which was in 1965, when the race riots and all of that were really moving, about half the school was black.
Yeah.
And that was really scary.
How did the whites and blacks get along at your high school?
Generally speaking, superficially, okay. While they were in school.
Yeah.
Outside of school, it wasn't as good.
Yeah.
Actually, I went with my sister to the Thanksgiving Day football game, and we won, beat our rival, of course, and we had a parade around the square in town, from the school, around the square, back to school. And there was a riot, and we were right in the middle of it.
There's a riot at your town square.
Yeah. Well, it was just off the town square when we were on our way back to the school.
What was the riot about?
I don't know how it started, but it was definitely...
All right, so the riot right off the town square, and what do you think started it, or what was
I
it
don't
about?
really know.
Was
but-
it the blacks rioting or the whites rioting, or?
All I know, we were going up a hill through what was known as the projects, and all of a sudden people were fighting and hitting each other with baseball bats and whatever they could pick up. And my sister and I ended up taking one of the white kids to the hospital. He got bashed in the head, and
So what
he was
did you
bleeding
do
all
when
over
you
the
saw
place. I was
all
like,
this?
holy Hannah.
Did you
know?
try to get away from it?
Well, you really couldn't. It was a narrow street, and there were like row houses on both sides of the street. There was no place to go. There weren't even alleys in between these homes.
Were the police there, or?
Eventually.
So you were
But we
there right at the
grabbed
beginning
this
of it.
kid that got bashed in the head and threw him in the car, and ran back to school, threw him in the car, and took him to the hospital. So we just tried to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Was anyone killed?
No, but I think there were some that were pretty seriously injured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did the newspapers or anybody comment on it the day after? Or?
Tactfully.
So
They tried to
didn't
kind
wanna
of
admit it so
downplay
much,
it.
huh?
Yeah. But kids would come to school with all kinds of weapons, and in the old part of the school building, if you, I gotta explain this properly. If you were going up the stairway, which was wide enough for two people, one going up, one coming down. If you're going up the stairs and you weren't moving fast enough and there was a black person behind you, especially the girls, they would have hat pins and they'd get you in your bun.
Yeah.
You know, hurry up, you so-and-so, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So just a lot.
It
lot
was
of
freaky.
tension. Yeah.
I got cornered in the locker room at school by 6 black girls because one of my friends was black. And, you know, they weren't so sure about me. And so they asked me questions and kind of felt me out to see what kind of person I was. Was I
Yeah.
okay to be that person's friend?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Do you remember the questions they asked you?
No, I
No.
don't, honestly. I tried to blot all that out. I
Yeah.
was petrified.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody in the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
I was like, whoa.
See, we lived in Germany for a little while when I was young because my dad was in the Army, and we lived in Washington. And so we were in communities with almost every ethnicity.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I remember in one house we lived in Germany, apartment house, there was us, you know, we were with a white family. We had a Hispanic family there. There was a black family there. There was a Turkish family there.
Right.
And it was just a real hodgepodge of people.
And that's great.
Yeah.
I wish all kids could grow up that way.
Yeah, and then when we went to Tacoma, Washington, it was that way. The military housing there, oh my goodness, you know, there was gobs and gobs of us. So we're all little kids running around. We're all different races, different colors, and we all loved each other. You know, so at that young age, we were just kind of put into it, and I credit that partially for why I am the way I am. You know, I can't say that I'm totally without any biases, but I try to be.
Right.
And, you know, I don't really hold hard feelings towards people, you know, of their sexual preference or race or color or religion or any of that stuff. My younger brothers and sisters, some of them, they didn't get that same upbringing. We moved to DeSoto, Missouri. And in DeSoto, I don't think it's as bad now, but when I was there, there was one place, it's a hilly place, and there was one hill they call Blow Hill, and that's where the majority, almost all of the black people in town lived.
Okay.
And depending on who you were, I guess, and your attitude, and because I had a lot of friends of many different races, and I think you know, people just kind of recognized me for not harboring things. So I got along fine with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But I know that, you know, not always did the blacks and whites in my town, even when I was there, get along. Just depending on who the person was, how
That's right.
they were a jerk or racist or prejudiced or what.
And the circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, plus we were all on the poor side of town. You know, Blow Hill is on the poor side of DeSoto.
Right.
It's balanced out a little more now, but in the 70s and 80s it wasn't. You know, that was the poor side of town.
Yeah.
Was where we all were.
Sure.
So you have the riot on your parade day. Did they have the parade again the next year?
Yes.
They did?
Yeah.
Without trouble? They probably had police
Yeah.
there for that one, didn't they?
It was well covered, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else do you remember about those times? Anything else stick out?
I don't know. I know that in the what's the name of that store that had the counter that you could go and have lunch. Isn't that awful? I'm having a senior moment. You know the kind of place I'm talking about.
Yeah,
though.
it was a diner.
Yeah,
and
it was actually a store like Kresge's. And it was a store kind of like Walmart kind of idea, smaller of course, but they had a counter and you could get lunch and whatever like they show in the pictures. And even my mother was not a prejudiced person. We'd go in and we'd shop a little bit and sit down and to have lunch or whatever. and she would make sure that I wasn't sitting next to a black person.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, I was little and I didn't really think much about it, but, you know, it was weird.
It's odd, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So in there, and did they have separate restrooms or anything separate in there, or?
I think I remember seeing in a gas station once the fountains
Yeah.
and the restrooms.
Yeah.
Of course, Jersey is a northern more state,
Uh-huh.
so it wasn't as prevalent
Yeah.
as it was down south.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
But the two races didn't socialize. They didn't mix
Well, I
like they
remember
do now. I mean,
my family would always give these disclaimers because they're all apostolic Pentecost,
Mhm.
very religious,
mhm.
but not always Christ-like, just
Right.
religious. And there would be things like, well, I don't hate them,
Mhm.
but they belong in our area, we belong in ours, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I love them all the same, but I don't think that we should mix. White people, black people shouldn't marry each other, and
Right.
things like that.
Right.
But now the grandkids, I consider myself one of the grandkids. Maybe I shouldn't because now there's 2 more generations under me,
Mhm.
and nobody really cares.
No.
There's probably one family in mind that a little more backwards who probably still has those same feelings, but the majority, when you look at the kids and you talk about things like that now, they look at you like you're foreign because they don't understand why anybody would dislike somebody else just based on,
Color or
Yeah.
something.
yeah,
Right.
which is a great thing.
When I was beginning dating,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allowed to date somebody that was not my same religion.
Yeah,
We were Protestants.
yeah,
I was raised Presbyterian.
uh-huh,
You don't go out with a Catholic.
yeah.
It's like, come on.
That's how it was for me too. With my family's religion, my ex-wife, she was Catholic, and that was
Mhm.
one of the big things. Oh, but
Mhm.
isn't her grandma Catholic?
Right.
I'm like, yeah.
And how are you going to raise the children?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh
what church are you going to go to after you get married?
my gosh.
And so we're basically the same as Assembly of God. They're
Right.
Pentecostal too,
Okay.
but they believe in the Trinity, that God and Jesus and the Holy Ghost are 3 separate entities, where the apostolic believe that there might have 3 different names, but they're basically one deity, one entity. And so we weren't even allowed to go and visit the Assembly of God church that believed everything else as far as speaking in tongues and all the spiritual stuff and the really hopping music and full immersion baptism. But because of that one little difference, we couldn't associate with them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It's just
Yeah.
funny, but that's just how it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were interesting times. It was really a whole different world.
And when people talk about the good old days,
Uh-huh.
I always wonder, what good old days are you really talking about? Because we've come so far as disease and illnesses, getting along with people, understanding people. Society is not as violent as it was when I was a kid, and I know it isn't as violent as it was when you were a kid.
No.
And
You felt much safer.
yeah, other than nostalgia, I don't understand the good old days. I think we're still improving now. I wouldn't want to go back.
But there are other things that are not as good now as they were then.
Like what?
Like AIDS and, all of that.
Yeah.
Back then, you didn't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
That didn't come about until, what, the 80s?
The 80s and the late 70s, and I remember that when I was in high school, because somebody in St. Louis had it. The parents wanted them to have their own water fountain, didn't want them going to school with their kids and so forth, and but that I always considered that kind of an uneducation thing, because for people of that time, especially if they had AIDS, they were treated so poorly and awfully, but now, the education is better, people,
Mhm.
so I don't know if AIDS is as prevalent now, and I know treatment and medicine is way better. But when I was in school, I'm thinking about like the drug use. Pills were still big.
Mhm.
Kids were taking pills. Marijuana was big.
Mhm.
The kids in junior high and high school, they could go outside and smoke if they had a note from home. And
Wow.
I know that now, marijuana use is still there, but all the really bad things
Mhm.
aren't around so much now. I know there's meth, but that's getting, society looks down on that so much that there's not as many of those users as there were
Mhm.
before, too. It seems like marijuana is socially acceptable, so people are more okay with that.
Right.
But like meth isn't
Mhm.
so much, so there's, the social
Stigma.
stigma
Yeah.
of it.
Right.
We're back during the 80s, there was a lot of stuff that was cool to do.
Oh, yeah.
Cocaine, and of course, nobody that I knew had the money for it, but some of the rich kids in town probably did,
Right.
and a lot of drinking, a lot of fighting, and I would be uncomfortable with my kids today being in my high school growing up.
Mhm.
I wouldn't like it.
Well, see, when I was in high school, it was more the drinking crowd or the pot crowd.
Yeah,
That was about all there was to it.
yeah,
There weren't pills and stuff back then, at least not that were accessible,
yeah.
you know.
Now it's prescription pills. That's a big thing now.
Heaven
Yeah.
knows, it's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. Well, all this has been really interesting, and I thank you for stopping by.
Well,
and
thank you for
I hope I
asking me.
didn't step on any toes or ask anything
Not
too
at
personal.
all. Not at all.
But it's fascinating. It's neat to see how people get from point A, from New Jersey,
To Indiana.
to nothing, Indiana, Brazil, Indiana, which is not known for anything other than, who'd we have living here? Al Capone lived here? No, Jimmy Hoffa
Hoffa.
was here for a year or two. But, all right, well, Dale, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
we'll stop this recording. It's Paul Harbour with Voices of America Recordings.